Brad Marchand's injury doesn't sound good. Flames contacted the Bruins about Brandon Carlo, according to an NHL Insider, and supposedly the Bruins will 100% move Frederic and Brazeau by Friday. So buckle up, Bruins fans. I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. If you've been liking my Bruins content, please leave me a like and subscribe. If you've already done so, thank you, and let's get into it. I know this week is going to be crazy, and I wanted to keep you updated on the news as it's going. Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts, the podcast today, has some updates around Brad Marchand and his injury and his contract negotiation. Have a listen.
The number one is Marchand. Looks like he'll be out until after the trade deadline, although not long term. Boston's history is their negotiations are always hard. It's just the way they're wired. Every negotiation they do is a grind. I'm honestly surprised a little bit it's gotten to this point. At different times, I've heard things have gotten better, and then it's kind of pulled back. It's kind of been like an ebb and flow of a negotiation. I don't know how to call this one right now as we do this pod, Kyle. As you said, and he said, at the Four Nations, he talked about being a Bruin for the rest of his career, and I completely agree that that's what he wants. Just that as we're sitting here on Sunday afternoon, the pod dropping Monday morning, that isn't a reality, and I just don't know how to handicap it.
Elliot's hesitation on Marchand signing a new deal, I will admit, gave me some pause. But I still feel the deal will get done. Both sides want to make it work and truly feel that it's the term that is the issue right now. If they do a Seth Jarvis type deal and defer his payment after his contract expires, I don't see why they can't make this deal work. The news that his injury is going to keep him out of the lineup for some time all but seals the Bruins are going to be sellers. And it's time to wave the white flag. Bruins currently sit, at the time of this recording, 2 points behind the Detroit Red Wings, who have the last wildcard spot. Every team ahead of the Bruins right now have games in hand, and the Bruins are now without Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, and Brad Marchand. That's your top two defenders and one of your top wingers. That's a killer. The odds of them making the playoffs got a lot harder, and that was evident the other night when they lost 1-0 to Minnesota because it has happened all season. They just can't score. I'm not saying start the rebuild, but it's time to move on from your UFAs and see what is available with regards to other players like Morgan Geekie and Brandon Carlo. Speaking of Brandon Carlo, Anthony DeMarco from Daily Faceoff said, sounds like the Flames have reached out to the Boston Bruins regarding Brandon Carlo. Teams have yet to dive into the details, but Calgary is interested. Not too many players on the Boston roster not available for the right price. Elliot Friedman even mentioned Carlo's name on 32 Thoughts, the podcast as well.
Yeah, I think Frederic does get moved. Even though he's hurt, I don't think that's going to prevent him. It's not something that's going to prevent him from playing when it matters. So I think he gets moved, no question about it. Brazeau, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Morgan Geekie because there is another year of team control, although RFA. He's got 19 goals, really slow start, and I think there was some attempts to try to extend him this year, which obviously didn't happen. I'd be curious to see where that one goes with him. You know, the other things, though, it's been a hard year for the Bruins, and it never started well, right? Just the whole Swayman situation, it dragged on to the eve of the season. He wasn't himself all year, and part of me wonders how much Boston thinks you start next season, things are calmer, he's signed long term. Does he come in next year just in a cleaner frame of mind, and that changes their calculus? I think that's one of the things they're kind of weighing. I have no doubt they've put some of them out there and said, what is the value on these guys? I know Nick has talked about Brandon Carlo quite a bit.
I want to start off by saying Carlo's had a down year, like most of the Boston Bruins, not named David Pastrnak, but I would be hesitant to trade him. Carlo is huge in the locker room, and if you're moving a player like him, you better be sure you're getting a great return. Carlo is one of the team's best penalty killers and eats a lot of minutes, so I would hope they did move him. It would be for a scoring or at least have a plan to fill the void after you move him. Another thing to consider, though, is Brandon Carlo has a 10-team no-trade list, and it's very common for US-born players to have Canadian teams on their no-trade list. We don't know what teams he has on the list, but if the Flames are on that list, it would make it very difficult to make this trade even happen. We would run into the same situation we saw last season during the trade deadline when the Bruins tried to move Linus Ullmark, and he denied that. Carlo also has 2 more years on his deal at $4.1 million per season, which makes him very attractive to keep as well, because that's a good cap hit. Calgary does have 2 first-round picks in next year's draft, and Carlo could quite possibly command one of them. Calgary currently sits in last wildcard spot in the West, but is playing a lot better hockey than the Boston Bruins right now. Heck, half the league is playing better hockey than the Boston Bruins right now. Wanting to make that push, plus the security of the term, makes me think the Bruins could get a first for Brandon Carlo. If the Bruins are shopping Brandon Carlo, I'm sure many contending teams around the league will be interested in adding him to their roster. Maybe with his concussion history, the Bruins think it's time to move now because his value is good and the Bruins might be headed for a retool. I kind of hope they keep him because I think his term and his ability to eat minutes is something every team is looking for. So many teams all the time trade a player and then go, we need that type of player in return, or we need that type of player down the road. So I never understand why they moved the guy in the first place. The upcoming draft isn't that deep, but the first round could have some gems. Very short video, I know, but I wanted to keep you updated this week and want to hear from you. If you want to talk about the Carlo rumors, Marchand injury, or anything about the Boston Bruins, let me know in the comments. That's a wrap on today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If news breaks surrounding the Boston Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you, and I'll see you next time.